Evening, everyone. Welcome to UNISA's Accelerated Masters and Doctoral Online Support Program. My name is Professor Tennyson Mkuchini. I happen to be the project leader. I happen to be the project leader of this exceptional program that we are offering to all of you as masters and doctoral students. Just for those of you who have not attended this before, we will begin the session with a video. You will of course see me in full. Then once I start the presentation, I will take my camera off and do the presentation. Then at the end, when it comes to entertaining questions and the like, I will turn my camera on again before we close. We have booked you from 6 to 8 p.m., but we tend to do this session for about an hour and a little bit. And then, of course, depending on the questions, we may finish soon after that or take a little bit longer. Also, we try to make sure that this event and the session that we have is captured by all of you. So we are recording this, and at a future time, we will avail the recording to you so you have a reference point. Any other inquiries that you have, you can direct to our support email addresses that have come, the email addresses that would have sent you the invitation to the session. And just for orientation purposes, we're here to speak to you about how you arrive at a topic for your research study, how you kind of focus your study so that it focuses and looks at it at an interesting enough angle for it to justify master's level study or doctoral level study. Then, of course, we'll speak to you about issues to do with writing your research aim, study objectives, and the questions, and basic conversations about how you contextualize your study. And as I say, I will try to keep this as non-complex as possible, because as you will probably have appreciated, there are great many textbooks that talk about research, but do so in ways that are very complicated. So the idea with this program and these sessions is that we demystify that and make it easier to understand without losing the complexity of what we're teaching you. So we will use examples that are easy to follow, but you will not at any point find that you've been shortchanged in terms of how complex the areas we're looking at are. So without taking too much time, I should point out that this session today on topic and formulation of your focus areas is part one of a two-part engagement. So there are bits that may appear to be missing at the beginning, but you will certainly have them covered tomorrow. So as I've said, I'm just going to turn off my camera now and then begin the session. Please remember, you've got access to the conversation chat on the side where you can ask questions. I will try to deal with these. I will deal with these when I finish the session. But of course, if any of them come up and they seem to relate to things that I can weave into the session, I will do that and make sure that we cover things as organically as possible. So once again, my name is Tennyson Mkuchini. I'm just about to turn off the camera so we can begin the session. Right. As I've said to you, today's session and the focus of the session is on guiding you on how you develop your aim, or how you develop your purpose, the objectives, how you derive objectives for a study, and also the relationship between objectives and research questions for your study. Folks, you will know as you get to work on research, you will soon appreciate that everything you learn does not click immediately at first attempt. You kind of have to be exposed to it over and over again for it to make sense. So in keeping with that ethos, we do this session and we'll bring up some of the issues that I discuss again and again throughout the progression of this semester's delivery of the program. But you be assured that you will definitely have understood things by the time we are done. Now, those of you who know me and have attended my sessions will know that I'm very big on making sure I spell out what your journey will look like. And also I'm big on defining the things and the concepts we're looking at, because as you will soon discover, much of the secrecy around how you should act in relation to particular things is always related to definitional issues. There we go. Now, a very quick overview of what the session will do. We'll begin with, when I say operationalize research, I'm referring to us looking at how research is defined, the key elements of research activity, and I will illustrate to you very clearly how those key elements are actually quite instructional on their own, that if you follow those key elements, you probably will never ever go wrong with anything research related, because the key elements of the definitions are the ones that guide and give you all the principles that we follow in everything to do with research. Then I will speak to you about what the purpose of any research study is, and how that purpose, which is to do with understanding problems, how you articulate as a researcher your intended focus for your study. And in simple terms, people always wonder, what's the quickest way of figuring out what research is all about? And it is all about understanding problems and understanding them in ways that can either tell you whether A causes B, or whether it can tell you enough about a subject so that you feel enabled to provide brand new insights into it. So that's the part where we'll talk about how you problematize your research focus so it becomes a viable study possibility. There are certain things that are called problem magnifiers. And if you look at the term, problem magnifiers is no different from the idea of you having a magnifying glass that helps you to exaggerate and bring out all the different arms and legs of a problem. And those things that do that are, one is called topicality, the other is called relevance, and another has to do with the statistical appearance of a problem. So I will speak you through that. And all these things are designed to help you to better be able to navigate the journey of conceptualizing your study, figuring out how you sell your study. Because if we are of the view that research is about understanding problems, the very first thing that you have to do is to justify that your chosen problem is indeed worthy of the attention of you as a master's or a doctoral student, and so forth. And the way you do that, the way you justify topics, is through these magnifiers, through demonstrating its topicality, its relevance, and its statistical significance. And from that, then we go into issues around how you develop the aim of your study, and how the aim relates to objectives and indeed to research questions. Of course, many people will treat the journey of developing your aim, the journey of developing your objectives, as if it's something that just comes to you like a song. And unfortunately, or fortunate for many of us, it is not like a song. There's actually a system that you utilize for developing research objectives. And that system is this taxonomy that I will share with you. Then from that, today we'll talk about how research objectives can be turned into questions and so forth, and vice versa. And that will be the beginning of you developing your topic. That's session 1. But as I've promised, the first point that we begin at is understanding this thing that we call research. The very thing that is we're going to create a topic for, the very thing that will develop an aim in relation to, and that is where this session really begins for you. So, and remember I said, and I've said this a few minutes ago, and I will keep stating it, that with a lot of the scholarly things that you look at, a lot of the things that have been defined by scholars, defined by people who are concerned with capturing the essence of things, you will often find that the definitions are very detailed, they are quite self-explanatory, and in many spaces they tell you what activities one should engage in if they are interested in understanding whatever the subject matter is. So that is no different for research. There are 2 definitions that are picked on here. There are many more, but I choose these 2 because they specifically identify the activities that should become second nature to you. When I say second nature, I mean everything that you do in terms of research, the activity of research should possess all these characteristics. And Sackett et al. Say that research is systematic, rigorous, and logical investigation that aims to answer questions about a phenomena of interest or problem. Now, I want us to just break this down so you understand what I'm talking about. And this exercise I do not to get overly academic, but it really has a lot of very clear practical relevance. So if you remember that, if you think about the fact that this Sackett et al. Talk about research being systematic. So they are saying that everything that we do in research will have its origins from a system. Its origins will be driven by some system of academic or scholarly activity. So if I ask you to develop the topic of your study, you don't just sit in a corner and think, let me see what topic works. You have to think of the different systems that are around to support you in developing a topic. Choose one of those systems, then utilize that system to develop the topic. If I ask you to collect data about issue X, I don't expect that you will just decide to go to the place where the data is and hope for the best and collect things as they appear or as you find them. The expectation is that you will think, what is the system of data collection that I will use and what are the rules in that system? So every research activity has got a system from which it draws. And every research action has many systems that it can choose from. So that's the other thing about research, that in as much as it's systematic, there is an expectation that there are many systems from which you can choose. So if I asked you to develop a topic, there's a particular system that people use for developing topics. There's a second system, there's a third system. All of them are intended to do the same thing. But the more familiar you get with all these different systems, the more you will know that, hey, this is the system I will use for this. You act in no different way from a mechanic who looks at a piece of work and they decide that I have 40 tools, I'm going to pick this tool. But one thing I know is that I can never deal with the car without the tool. And that tool in your world is these systems that you use. Then the next thing that Sackett and others speak about is this thing of rigor. And rigor really means interrogating everything from every perspective possible. So if I say rigorous attention was paid to this, to that, to that, I am saying that every possible action to improve quality was utilized. If you say the police rigorously questioned someone, you're saying that they asked them about everything possible from every angle, from the angle of this, from the angle of that. So rigor is about being able to subject something to interrogation from different angles. So in research, what we're saying is that if you make a choice and you decide that, yes, I am going to do interviews, the expectation is that you should question from every different perspective about whether the interviews are better or not, and compare them to other things. So you are like interrogating that choice from every angle possible. So now we know research is about being systematic, it's about being thorough and interrogating things from every possible angle possible. Then the next bit it talks about logical investigation. So when we say logic, we mean that things should have an incremental presence from the simplest to the most difficult, from the closest to the furthest, from the generic to the specific, that type of logic. In the same way that you would, if you were going to do something, you would think, what is the most logical way to approach this? Do I approach, if I'm going to cook a meal, do I approach it by going firstly to buy the ingredients? Do I then take the ingredients, prepare them? Or do I, and then do I turn on the stove? Or would you go and turn off the stove, then go and buy the ingredients? So that whole logical approach to this that I'm speaking about is the fact that when you do research, anything you do in research has to have been subjected to a logical process. That process may only involve 2 steps, but it is 2 steps that have been derived by logical discernment. You've decided or categorize things according to what would logically happen. So far, I'm telling you that everything you do must be borrowed from a system. Any minute you see yourself thumb-sucking in research, guessing or doing whatever, you know you're doing something wrong. Every decision that you do from here on must come from a system. The rigor, everything you do, you look at it from different angles and you say, what is it that I've chosen? What are the alternatives to this? Why did I choose this option and not that option? You talk about logical investigation. And so your issues that you look at should be presented and explored in a way that is in line with logical exploration, the logic of understanding a problem. And each of these are layered on each other in research. So when you're being systematic, you're expected to be rigorous and logical too. When you're being rigorous, you're expected to be systematic and logic too. When you're being logical, we expect you to be logical, rigorous, and systematic all in one. So those 3 things are kind of the mind of a researcher. A researcher is always systematic, They're always rigorous, they're always logical. And that is why this also prepares you for other engagements. You will meet your supervisor who you will present an idea to, and the first thing that they do is they question your idea from left, right, and center. And you think, why on earth are they doing this if they believe in my study? They're doing that because it is the job of research to be rigorous. It is the job of research to ask questions from you that you may not have asked yourself, because that's the only way you can truly say, I understand a topic, when you've been subjected to all the different permutations of how it can exist. Then Sackett also says that research aims to answer questions about a phenomena of interest or problem. So you know that with research, the specific goal of research is to answer a question or questions that relate to a problem that exists. So unless you can justify or turn your interest that you have into a real life problem, then you have you are challenged, because that means it is not really designed in the way that a research topic should be designed. So if you're wanting to understand what drives people's violence or whatever it is that you've noticed, then the problem you're looking at is violence. Some of you might be doing studies in agriculture where you're looking at the growth patterns of particular things. Then the problem may be the fact that there is a lack of that vegetation that you want to grow. There's some of you who may do things that are to do with economy. You will have a problem that is central to your study. And if you don't have a problem or a question that you want to understand more clearly, then you essentially do not have a research topic. So what we are saying now is you need to develop a problem. You need to be able to show that problem and its different angles through being rigorous. You need to do all this using systematic approaches. We expect you to be logical in everything that you do. So that is what a definition of research, just 2-3 lines, tell you clearly about my expectations or the expectations of the examiners or anyone who engages with you in your research journey. We expect you to be systematic, to be rigorous, to be logical, and we also expect that the thing you are focusing on, the aim of your study, will relate to a question or to a phenomena that presents a problem. So that is where we begin. Now, I've offered another definition. I won't go into this one, but if you look at it, you will see the same type of diagnostic things appearing. The methodical step-by-step approach, that's to do with logical investigation. The examination has to do with being rigorous. And then, of course, the particular problem area relates to that phenomena of interest or problem that Sackett spoke about. And every definition you find that's been thought through and talks about research asks for the same sort of expectations. So in basic principles, we know that regardless of whatever study you're looking at or whether it comes from the qualitative paradigm, quantitative paradigm, or mixed method paradigm, you will know that research by its very nature is systematic, it's rigorous, and it is about a disciplined search for the truth as it relates to a specified problem. So you want to understand a problem, but you will do so using systematic approaches, rigorous approaches, and applying yourself logically. And of course, what I said to you was that, remember, everything that you do in research is choice. So when I say that you have to be systematic, there will be 20 systems from which you can choose. And you choose one, and your next peer might choose another. And once you've done that, you have the chance now to develop a research problem. You might choose one angle, the next person will choose another. Once you have a method of collecting data, someone will choose one, you might choose another. So you get to realize that research is essentially about a series of thoughtful decisions that you make about all the alternative approaches that are available to you and their consequences when you choose them. So if you decide you're going to do interviews instead of questionnaires, you must understand and present to us what the consequences or the implications of choosing one over the other are, what the limitations are, or what the benefits of one approach are. So those are some of the universal pictures of what research is about. Now, in keeping with the idea that research is about a systematic, logical progression that is rigorous, one of the things that allows that to happen is this thing they call the research process. It is actually literally the process by which any formal activity of research will follow. So any formal piece of research that's undertaken, if it follows the principles of research, it will have distinct phases. The very first phase is this phase of conception, the phase at which you conceive something. The phase, if you think about conception, conceiving, all of those things are to do with birth, the genesis, the beginning. So the first phase of any study is where you come up, you work on this idea that you have. You think, let me conceive, let me conceptualize, let me come up with an idea of what I need to do to research. And that first phase of the research process has a very specific set of things that happen in it. But the word that sticks out is this word that they have played around with different versions of. This term that really is, in essence, conceptualization. And that for you is the process of you developing and refining what seems to be abstract ideas, ideas that are not based in reality, they're just thoughts. You develop them, you refine them, and in doing that, you may think about stuff, you may rethink it, you may theorize using other theories that you know to help give you a theory that will be the driving theory behind your interest. You have to make decisions and then you review those ideas. The conception phase is according to this is sourced from a researcher called Parahu. He talks about conception having 4 stages. The stage of formulating the research problem and determining the study purpose. The phase of searching for literature that's related to the problem. Then you developing a theoretical construction of the tentative research. So it's you saying, hey, I'm interested in this. What are the theories that drive my understanding of the topic I'm interested in? And what are the theories that I will use to help me understand what I've got in front of me? Then, of course, depending on the type of research you're doing, the phase of conception also allows you to create a hypothesis. And a hypothesis is just a statement that points out what you are expecting to see when you study this problem. So today we are focusing on the area of formulating the research problem and determining the study purpose. And that issue of formulating a research problem also follows a system. And that system is that when you describe a problem to us, or you share a problem with anyone who is interested in the problem that you're looking at, you formulate it according to a system. And then your formulation should also look at the different tentacles of what a problem is in a way that shows rigor. And you need to do this in a logical way. And the logic of formulating a problem is that many of us, when we formulate our problem, the initial experience of that problem is something we observe personally. So some of you might be thinking, I want to understand why it is that males are treated better than females within the workplace. Chances are your initial identification of that challenge came from an anecdotal observation, from a personal experience, or for something you saw yourself or read about yourself. So your first point of acknowledging that, there is a problem here, comes from the closest possible experiential level, that of an anecdote, that you've seen it yourself. You felt it yourself, you read about it yourself. So that's where the birth of a problem is. Then, of course, from that, people then will extend their understanding of the problem by looking at empirical evidence that relates to that issue to see whether the evidence confirms what they've seen or what they're seeing. So if, for example, I worked in an area and I saw that males were getting treated better than females, and I wondered why that was so, and my initial observation would be, I saw this myself in my workplace, but this observation that I had was supported by a range of other pieces of evidence. And that range of evidence is split between evidence that comes from people who have studied the practice area, or it comes from other research and empirical work. So now when you're formulating your problem, we've agreed that it starts off with an anecdotal personal observation of the phenomena you're interested in. Then you expand on that by going to the literature to check whether the thing you're seeing is indeed confirmed by literary sources, and that what you saw was not a product of you being a bad observer. It's actually a real phenomena that needs to be understood. So when you formulate a problem, that is the system that we follow, that there is anecdotal observation, and then there is observation of the phenomena through others who have written and other evidence that exists. Now, so once you've refined this, or once you've understood that there's a personal problem that you've seen, it's playing out in the evidence and so forth, you are now compelled to actually write about that problem. So this is where the tricks that I spoke about come in, the problem magnifiers. So you now know that, look, there is an issue here that you believe needs to be studied, an issue that you believe is indeed a problem that needs to be better understood. Because remember, research is about understanding problems or phenomena. So when we are confirming that your study is indeed important, one of the things that the most important thing is how you contextualize or justify your study. And contextualizing your study and justifying it are literally things to do with you showing that this thing you want to study is indeed a worthwhile problem, is indeed serious enough, and there is indeed enough questions that need to be answered in relation to it. So, and to show that, or to show your work as being important in the likely contribution it can make, the way you show that is that you must demonstrate critically that your problem that you're looking at is indeed a problem that matters to the world. So the more dimensions of a problem you can show, the more you sell that topic that you've chosen. So if you choose something that you can show really has impact, it's really badly understood and our failure to understand it is resulting in a lot of problems, then you've got the makings of a good study. And folks, and that's how, when you are deciding what your research topic is, every area of interest that you've got, you subject to the dimensionality test of problematizing your work. And what I mean by that is, if you have something that you have a hunch is a problem, you think, this thing looks like it's worth researching. So I must now check whether this is indeed can be understood in a way that makes it a problem. And if it is a problem, is it a problem that I can show to have quite a number of problematic dimensions? Does the problem play itself out in different ways that make it complex and worthy of my interest? And those different ways, or those magnifiers are that the first one is, are you able to demonstrate that the thing you're looking at is globally relevant? It's not just a problem in your neighborhood, it's a problem that has faces in other neighborhoods across the world, across the continent, and indeed in the rest of the country. And then you can justify that, look, I can demonstrate one thing about this problem, that I have described it as something I experienced in my little corner. But when I go to the literature, I notice that it's a challenge that is testing the world at large. It's testing my continent. It's testing my nation. It's testing my city. And the more you can show that, the more you are now demonstrating that, hey, this is not a personalized problem that's only significant to me. It also has faces in other places. So that's the first dimension that you show, demonstrating or finding out. So if you have a topic, you go and find out whether this problem you've got, can you pull out evidence to show that there's a global manifestation of it? Is there a continental manifestation of it? Is there a national way in which it plays out? Because once you can do that, you now are saying, look, this study that I've chosen is not only good because I like it, it actually is relevant to the world at large. It's relevant to my continent. It's relevant to my country. And you will see the order in which I've done this is systematic, in that I start with, it's logical. I start with the biggest unit, the globe, and I look at problematizing at a continent level, at a national level. You might even want to do it at a level. You might be studying your problem as a district or province or whatever, and you will get to that level. So that's the first thing you need to, the first dimension of a problem that needs to be exploited and shared by you as a researcher. So, and that is the reason why when you read proposals for studies, they usually start by saying, issue so-and-so has been shown to exist in 95% of the world. It's identified as a challenge in China. It's this, it's that, it's that, it's that. You're demonstrating the global, continental, national existence of the thing you've chosen. Then the next thing that you choose is, are you able with your topic to demonstrate its topicality? And what topicality means is that, is this problem that you're chosen something that is seen as a here and now problem? It's not a problem that was stressing the world 10 years ago. Is it stressing the world as we speak? And how another way of looking at topicality is that if you are someone who works, say, in the field of engineering, and you were to go and pick up the most popular magazines of engineering, would your topic or something related to your topic be included in this year's edition of your discipline? If it is, then you know that, hey, it's topical, it's being discussed now, it's being contested. So if you can demonstrate or confirm to us that your problem is topical also, that makes it even a better problem. If you choose something that used to be a problem and is no longer topical, then you have the problem that it is problematic, but it is not something that the world have any interest in now. So you need to show your problem and its topicality. And how people would show topicality is somewhere in your overview of the study, you would say things like the issue or the problem that you're focusing on continues to be debated in so and so, and evidence of this is seen in the fact that as we speak right now, certain think tanks are working on X and Y and Z in relation to it. That's demonstrating topicality. Topicality relates to the here and now existence of a problem. So the May 2021 presentation of the problem. The next dimension of a problem that you need to look at and think about and find out about is this dimension of relevance. And relevance is similar to topicality. The only difference with relevance is that it's over the long term. So if you can demonstrate that your problem that you're looking at has been a problem for nations worldwide for the last 30 years by you showing, citing literature from 1997, 2007, 2017, and saying to the world, look, this thing I'm focusing on was a problem in 97, it's a problem now. So you are saying that it has long-term relevance. And that's another way of demonstrating that the nature of your problem. Remember, I spoke about rigor. So we're looking at how you split a problem up so people can see it. And there's a system to doing that. That system is you demonstrate its global presence, you demonstrate its topicality, you demonstrate its relevance. Then the last thing that you demonstrate is how significant the thing that you've chosen is. And the way we show significance is by one of two things. Something can be important and significant by virtue of its statistical appearance. So if I said to you, look, I'm studying problem X, it affects 1 person out of 2 billion people. Immediately I lose interest. There's no significance there. But if I said, oh, out of every 1 million people, we know that 70% are affected by this thing. Statistically, I've now shown another dimension of the problem, that it's not just a problem because of itself, it's a problem because it's so widespread and it's affecting everybody. Then the other way that you can demonstrate that something is significant as a topic is by a subjective confirmation. And that subjective confirmation is not to do with how commonly expressed a problem is. It's more to do with the nature of the problem and the experiences associated with the problem. So let me give you an example. Say if there are people who study things like the abduction of children by parents, by one of the parents. So you will know that if you go out and you read about this, and I read about it a lot, this particular topic, statistically it's not common. It's not for, if you look at a country that has maybe 4 million children who are below the age of 18, in those 4 million children, you might get 45 stories a year of children who were stolen by their mother or their father from the other parent. And 45 in millions is a small number, totally insignificant. But the nature of that problem and the trauma that it causes to the child, to the family, to our general trust of each other as society is so severe that the topic is significant not because it appears often, but it's significant because its appearance is so traumatizing. So there are some people who will do, if we look at these huge terrorist activities where gunmen go to schools and shoot each other, shoot people, in a population with millions of people. The States is 253 million people, thereabouts, and they might have 80 of these incidents a year. So essentially they have 80 problematic people. But you will notice that we don't go, 80 out of 250 million, that's nothing. We actually take that seriously because of the nature of the challenge that comes with it. So when you look at your topic, you are able to problematize it fully by acknowledging its global presence, demonstrating its topical nature, demonstrating its relevance, showing that the topic is significant either because of numbers or either because of its subjective and experiential appearance. Of course, not all problems can show all these dimensions. There are some problems that are problems just because they affect everybody on Earth. So they are significant because of their number, but they're not significant because of topicality or anything else. So, but if you want a beautiful research topic, the more you can show that your research topic has all these dimensions at play, the more you are showing us that you really have a vibrant topic. And of course, the fewer of these dimensions you have, the less levels your problems has. And of course, if the levels are less, then the excitement and the impact of your proposed study is also reduced. But that's a key element. So any of you who are looking at, is this the topic I want to write about? Is this the topic I want to focus on? You subject it to that dimensionality process or system that I showed you just now. That can you show, demonstrate its global appearance? Can you demonstrate its topicality, its relevance, and so forth? And if you can do those things, then you're in the money. So now the next thing that we look at is you have now got a way of sharing or testing out whether your problem is indeed worthy of being a problem. And you now have to develop a global aim about what you want to do in relation to that problem or what you want to understand. And of course, that aim has got objectives and questions. And a lot of people's misunderstandings is because they don't understand the principles and the actual concepts that we're talking about. So when we talk about an aim, remember, I have said research has one global aim, one universal aim, and that aim is to answer a question that relates to a phenomenon of interest or a problem. That's the first. So when we define what an aim is, it is what you hope to do, your overall intention in relation to the thing you're wanting to study. So is your aim to carry out an exploration? Is your aim to understand if A causes B? Is your aim this? And it also gives a sense of what your knowledge levels are intended to be by the end of the proposed study. So essentially, it's what you want to know ultimately at the end of a study. Folks, I want to jump and align this to something else. So when later we do objectives, there are people who have their final objective that looks like maybe the final objective is to develop a framework or to develop a model. Even though your final objective is to develop a model, the aim of your study is not to develop a model. The aim of your study is to understand and to answer questions that relate to the problem, and your understanding of that problem gives you information for you to develop the model. So the aim is not developing the model. The aim is understanding the problem that you have now developed a model for. So the bit about developing a model is in essence not a research activity. because it is an outcome of a research activity. And that's what how you differentiate. So many people would say, hey, the aim of my study is to develop a model or a framework to do this. Then we'll go back and say, look, the aim of your study is not to develop your framework. The aim of your study is to understand problem X. You are understanding problem X in order to be able to develop a framework. So you will find that many aim statements, the statements that relate to aims, will say the aim of the study is to develop, the aim of the study is to understand the reasons behind this in order to develop a model for this. The in order bit is not part of the aim. It's part of you saying, look, once I finish the aim, I promise to use my knowledge for this other good. So yes, and generally speaking, because aims talk about your final destination, they tend to be broad. But now, as we speak about this, the objectives of a study are best described if I use an example like this. Say if you were someone who was flying from, I hope you have some general geographic awareness here. If you were someone who was leaving South Africa and flying to, let us say for ease of reference, you are flying to somewhere in Europe. Your aim might be to get to Europe, but objectives relate to the specific steps that you will take to get to Europe. So maybe your first objective might be, I need to buy a ticket. So that's objective 1, you buy a ticket. Objective 2 might be, I need to get to station A to catch an aeroplane. Objective 3 might be where the plane stops midway on its way to Europe. Objective 4 will be the next place. And then one of the things you notice with objectives is that they are little steps that are progressively designed to walk you towards this big aim that you have. So, and remember, everything you do that's research is logical, is rigorous, and it's systematic. So there is a system for developing objectives, and I will expose you to a bit of that system tonight before we close up. But in essence, when you have objectives, the way you even develop objectives follows a particular system that I will share with you. Now, I also want to share something else. By definition, and this should be something your logic should be able to tell you, you can safely assume that if you're doing a study, and the study is a master's level study, the thing you want to understand or your big aim will not be a complicated aim. It will be less complicated than a doctoral aim. So in essence, your intention or your intended destination on a doctorate will be much further away than the intended destination of a master's by virtue of the differing levels of study. So if that is indeed the case, then one will expect that a doctorate will have more objectives than a master's. And then there are some people who do even more limited masters. So there's something called a full master's. Then some people will talk about a mini dissertation. So a mini dissertation is it's a baby of a master's. And each of these different types of things will have much less ambitious aims and much fewer objectives than, say, a doctoral aim or a doctoral objective. And on that basis, I want to just give you an indication. So when you're writing up your proposal and you're wondering, how do I know that my objectives are now in the region of a doctorate? How do I know that my objectives are in the region of a master's? Or how do I know that my objectives are in the region of a mini dissertation? There's no easy answer to it, but there are some discoveries that people have made over the course of time. And one of them is that Vaguely speaking, all a dissertation, a master's level piece of work or a doctorate will all have one aim. They all have one destination, but one destination might be closer and the other might be further by differentiation of the level of study. So whether it's a dissertation, a mini dissertation, a master's or a doctorate, you all have one aim. And then, but in terms of objectives, a mini dissertation could possibly have two aims, two to three objectives, sorry, not aims, objectives. The objectives are the steps, the aim is the final destination. So a mini, if you're someone doing a mini dissertation, so if I'm talking to students here who are on a master's program and the master's program has got other courses that they do, then at the end they have one small research course, they are likely to be doing a mini dissertation, and that will, you could get away with two objectives that take you to the final aim. If you're doing a full master's where the entire master's is based on research, you never attend any taught classes outside of what I'm teaching now, there are no modules apart from the main research, then you're likely to be doing a full master's, and that generally has between 3 to 5 objectives. By the way, folks, these are generic observations. They are not rules set in stone. They just give you a sense of comfort. So you know that, hey, if I do 3 to 5, I'm vaguely in the ballpark for what's expected. Then with doctorates, objectives can range from 5 to about 8 objectives. Once again, and I keep repeating this over and over, these numbers are not fixed. But many people, when I lecture, they always ask, can you please give me something I can hold on to so I can kind of use it as a test to guide me? So that's where these numbers come from. And the general principle is that if the aim is further away and objectives are steps that you take, then the further away the aim is, the more steps one takes to get there. And if the aim of a mini dissertation is smaller than the aim of a doctorate, then we expect you to have fewer steps. And that those steps are the objectives. So this difference in numbers makes sense, it's logical. And it comes from this system of understanding that the further away something is, the more steps you'll take to get to it. The closer it is, the fewer the steps. Sounds logical. Then I've mentioned objectives to you, and there's now the principle or issue of research questions. So studies will have objectives, studies will have questions, and one of the things that occurs in studies is that objectives and questions can be interchangeably used, but they mean different things. And I want to tell you what different things is. So an objective of a study may be that the first thing you want to understand in a study may be you want to assess or to determine the extent of problem X. That is an objective. But a research question is taking that statement, which was an objective, and expressing it as a statement that is a question. So if an objective was to determine the extent of problem X, a research question would be, how common is problem X? So the how common is problem X is a research statement, and determining the extent of problem X is an objective. So you know that what I'm really saying to you is that objectives and questions are the same thing. One is a statement, the other is a question. So as a trick, I always ask people, if your study has 4 objectives, how many research questions do you think it might, how many questions do you think it might have? And the answer is 4, because it's the objectives turned backwards. So it turned into questions. Now, there are, remember, your ultimate understanding of the thing you are looking at is a process by which you get to learn about a topic. So essentially, when we talk about you solving this issue as part of your research, we are saying you're going to solve that thing by learning about it. And when we learn, there's a system that we follow when we learn things. And that system was described initially by a guy called Benjamin Bloom. And this system is used in teaching and in learning, but is actually a very important way and a useful way of developing objectives of a study. And I will show you how it is used. Folks, it's a bit of an extension, this taxonomy. It's called Bloom's taxonomy. People sometimes immediately understand it, and others take longer. But it's definitely a thing that you should work on. And once you get it and you use it, you'll be so amazed at how even the way that you write your work when you are arguing changes, because it really, really gives you a structure. It gives you a system for processing knowledge. And basically what Benjamin Bloom came up with was this idea that all of us have particular cognitive steps that we go through when we are understanding newly found things. So when we get to know and understand something, we organize our learning of that thing in very specific ways. And it describes levels of familiarity with things. So if you accept that to be true, if you were studying, say, what causes problem X, he would say for you to understand what causes problem X, you have to have a number of objectives to do with how you learn different levels of information about X so you can figure out what causes it. And that process, the incremental way in which you learn, is the way in which you phrase your objectives. And that's where Bloom's taxonomy comes in handy. And you will notice this, once it clicks, you will notice that everything that you've learned is actually based very much on Bloom's way of understanding things. And basically what Bloom said was that he said, look, when people become familiar with a topic, the way they develop knowledge about that topic starts at the very most basic level. That you know something, you recognize it, you can remember it. So, you know, when we first did mathematics as kids, we would all be given the times table and people would say, what's 2 times? Just do the 2 times table, and you go and you sing it to all relatives. The minute someone says, what's 4 multiplied by 2, you get stuck, because you only can remember 2 multiplied by 4 and not 4 multiplied by 2. That was an entry-level engagement with knowledge. You just had knowledge of something and you could just remember it. Then as we became more and more advanced in our understanding of issues around the world, around numbers, you begin to then understand how certain things work. So your knowledge level moves from just basic remembering of something to having understanding. And once you understand something, then you are in a position now to apply it. And when you apply something, it means you know it enough to do it. So there are people who will have learned and read about how to drive, but the better people who know have learned about how to drive, but they've also driven. Then as you get more and more competent at things, you now start to see things from different angles. And analysis refers to a person's ability of looking at something and rigorously being able to understand it from different angles. So if I say to you, look, what is your opinion about terrorism? Do you think that there's ever a time that a person who does a terrorist act could be justified in doing that? Or is there ever a time when killing someone can be forgivable? You might have a position, you might say, look, as far as I'm concerned, anyone who takes a life must be punished entirely. That is your position. But when you know the topic well enough, you will know that, hey, I hold this position, but there are 20 other positions that exist. And those 20 other positions are that I may believe everyone who commits this crime should be punished, but there are other people who think that if you commit the crime and there are mitigating circumstances, there were other things that were going on, we might have occasions where the crime is not a crime anymore. So that shows that you have an appreciation of the fact that there are different positions and perspectives in relation to one thing that you're seeing. That's being able to analyze something. Then once you've analyzed something, you will find that you now have all these 10 different positions, and you are better informed to take those 10 different positions and to create a new synthesized position. And that synthesized position is you combining all the views and weighing them out and coming out with a position that says, hey, I know there are all these 10 different views, and mine is also one of the 10, but when I listen to all the others, I think a more well-judged way of being is to consider this new approach. So that synthesis relates to someone's ability to take 10 different positions, join them up, and come up with a new understanding of what the position that makes the most sense is. That synthesis, or it's a form of evaluation. Then Bloom said, once people have evaluated, the highest thinkers of all are able to now create a whole new alternative to all the things they were analyzing, a whole new alternative to the thing that they saw as the more balanced approach. So his view was that when you are new to knowledge, all you can do is remember. As you get more advanced in your understanding of the topic, you get a more wider comprehension of what's going on. Then you can now get a comprehension of your position and those of others when you analyze. Then you are able to take that analysis and join it up and come up with a new understanding based on all the 10 different positions that you are now aware of. And then from that, you create a new story. So you will then notice that when it's time for you to do the objectives of a study, if you're going to have a logical presentation of the objectives, then one would say, why don't you start with it? Your first objective should be in the knowledge/comprehension domain. Your second objective should be in the application domain. Your next objective could be analysis. Your other objective could be evaluation. Then your final objective is the one where you say you intend to develop a framework where you're creating. So essentially, when it's time for you to do your objectives, and we will cover this in greater depth tomorrow, you actually become capable now of saying, okay, my first objective should show that I understand this topic. So then you decide that the first objective is to determine the extent and nature of the problem. That's your first objective. Then your analysis maybe is to determine or to develop insights into the opposing opinions that exist in relation to X. Then your next one will become something in the synthesis level. Then your next one might become a creation objective. So you realize that the order in which the objectives appear is related to the order in which Bloom said we get to know things. We have the most simplistic objective to the most cognitively intensive one at the end. So once again, when you're developing an objective, you didn't just come up with oh, I know I want to do these 10 things. You actually now have a format for deciding what are the things that I need to know to be able to get to that aim that I promised. And so that's how we apply this piece of work. Now, just so you know, just for the sake of making things easy, what I've done is I've veiled the different types of words that you expect to have when you're talking about an objective that relates to remembering. Remember, the remembering is the most basic level. So you may find that objective 1 of a study says I need to describe such and such. They've chosen it because description is a way of demonstrating your ability to remember things about a topic. Or the first objective will be to identify. Yes, so these slides that I'm giving you just give you a sense of how you deal with certain things. Now, when you talk about understanding, which is a little higher than just remembering, people will ask you, maybe you might see an objective saying that you want to compare this to that, or you want to offer an explanation of that, or to develop insights that help you to explain X, Y, Z. So that's what understanding is about. Then the next level is applying. And this then becomes where some people will have as an objective that they actually want to take that knowledge that they have and maybe test it out through some form of application that they use. Not all research has got a clear applying level. So many of you will have research where you do a remembering objective, an understanding objective, you don't have an applying one, and the next one that we see is an analysis objective. And once again, analysis has to do with you comparing things. It has to do with you obtaining different viewpoints from different contributing entities. So if you want to understand a problem that involves 10 different groups, analysis is a good place where you will say you want to understand X, Y, Z from the positions of all these other angles. So, and then of course, the next one is this synthesis stroke evaluation. And that's where you begin now by making judgments about what it is that you've seen. You have seen all the different perspectives that analysis offered you. So you now have an objective that looks at drawing all the things you've seen and developing a new understanding of what you think is going on. Then, of course, the final objective is this objective of creation. Now, interestingly, those of you doing master's work are not required. You are not required to show creation because it's seen as a higher order level of work, and it is something that is the exclusive domain of a doctoral study. So some of you who are doing doctorates will say, hey, they talk about a unique contribution to knowledge that you must make, and that unique contribution will arrive in the study, generally speaking, as an objective. It will come up as an objective, and it will be that objective that relates to your intention to create something, your intention to develop a model, your intention to develop a framework, your intention to offer recommendations. That is creating. Of course, master's work also has a creating element, but when they do creation at a master's level, it is seen as an added bonus, an added show off of how good you are as a student. But at doctoral level, creating is a requirement. So if it's not there, then the work is essentially not a doctorate. So I've shared with you some of these, the initial ways of thinking about how you develop your topic. We looked at the different requirements of research. We looked at how you magnify a problem. We looked at the difference between an aim and an objective. I spoke to you about one of the systems for developing objectives. I've walked you through some of the different angles around how you develop objectives. And then, of course, I've walked you through Bloom's taxonomy as used by some to guide you when you develop objectives of how you understand the topic. So I've attached some useful reading pieces for you to look at, and you will find that these are generic texts that I've offered. The recording is available for you, as I've said. The recording is available for you, but at this point, the idea was really to open your mind up to the world of conceptualization, the first phase of your study. And tomorrow we will get into much more detail about this. And remember, we get to focus in on how you differentiate master's level work from doctoral level work, because ironically, we struggle a lot with that, hey? And I will speak to you about certain things that make your study stand out. And it's important that we speak about these when you are at the very beginning of this process, because once you commit and you commit to the wrong study and you've pitched it wrong, there's very little corrective work that can be done. So I will take us off this. There is a recording that's available to you. I'm turning the camera on now, and I'm going to look at some of the questions that have been posed, and we will see what is available for me to respond to. I am trying, right. Okay, show Q&A. For some reason, the questions have not shown themselves up at my end. While I wait for them to come up, if there aren't any questions that have come up, I will. It's very strange. I'm not seeing any of the questions here. The live event Q&A is up. And while I am waiting for them to be queued so I can see them, I will maybe just touch on a few things that needed to be stated much more clearly, and that is the issue around the systematic nature of research. Okay, now the questions have come up. The systematic nature of research. Your clarity about the fact that research is always about understanding a problem. It's always about understanding a phenomena. It's never about developing something. It is about understanding a phenomena. So if you see yourself saying that you aim, if you say that your aim is to understand, or your aim is to develop a model or something, then you know that actually you've gone one step too far. Your aim should be a knowledge discovery aim, not a development aim. Yes, so here we go. Now I'm looking at questions, and folks, just for interest's sake, we do get a lot of questions. Some of them have been attended to on the forum. Some of the questions actually might relate to things that are not particularly within the scope of the session to answer, but we generally retain some for exploration. So the first thing is just a note about your ability to access this after the fact, that the recording will be available for you. Okay, so there's someone who said, please give examples of systems that can be followed. I think basically what I was saying with this, I think Mafondo has asked this question. All I'm saying is that everything in research has its basis from one system or another. So if you are going to develop objectives, I showed you Bloom's taxonomy as a system that you can utilize. if you're going to develop a topic, I will share with you tomorrow a range of systems that are available for developing topics. If you're going to decide on what data collection approach you utilize, there's a system of differentiating one choice from the next. So that's what I was saying, that the whole world of research is not about guesswork. There's nothing that you do because it feels right to do. You do it because there's a system that supports and believes that that's how you should approach a particular problem. Okay. There is thank you for the session. It is very beneficial. There's someone who's asked about the session and says it sounds similar to something that I offered last week or some weeks ago. I think it sounded similar at 7:08, but I'm sure that by the time we got to 7:10 or 7:15, it wasn't similar anymore. And the reason being that every time I do a research topic, I always begin with an understanding of the concept of research, because once you get that, then all the expectations with any topic revolve around being systematic, rigorous, logical. So I think the questions that were posed a bit earlier in the session, and as the session progressed, it was different. And you will notice every session I teach around research embeds in you issues of being systematic, issues of logical attendance to things, and issues about rigor, and the perception that research is about a pursuit of answers to questions or understanding of a phenomena. And that I do because it's one of the most common misunderstandings that you find. People think research is about designing models and stuff. It is in its truest definitions, it's about understanding problems. But once you've understood those problems, you can of course design the model. So people will then mistake the designing of the model for what research is about, when in fact research is about gaining that knowledge that you need to know enough about a topic so you can design a model. Then there is a difference between an aim and a goal. Look, they are exactly the same, but in research we speak about aim. Goal is much more of a mainstream word that people use in everyday language. So people won't say, what's your research goal? They'll say, what's your research aim? What's your research purpose? And the purpose and the aim are the same thing, but different schools of thought use aim, others use purpose. Generally speaking, if we were to be very particular, the purpose is usually associated with qualitative studies, and aim is associated with quantitative studies. But that is a very puristic differentiation. You would only sit in a room of professors all over the place. There might be 2 or 3 that concern themselves with that differentiation, but really aim and purpose are seen as the same. Goal is similar, but it's not seen as an academic term. How many objectives for doctoral research? I think I explained that there is no set number, but the patterns suggest that 5 to 8 is about right, given that we are saying that the aim of a study that's at doctoral level is far from where you begin, so more steps need to be traveled for you to get there. Then I have a thank you that is thanking me for the session. I'm grateful for that. Can you choose to use only research questions? Okay, so there's a question here proposed by Samson about the fact that I've differentiated between research objectives and research questions, and he asked whether one can use only research questions and not objectives. The truth, folks, and once again, there's purist research answers. There's answers that pure researchers use, then they are answers of the reality that we're in. In pure research terms, they say that qualitative research is about trying to understand things you have no knowledge about. So, and because of that, everything you do is phrased as a question rather than as a statement. So qualitative research tends, if you were being purist, it would have research questions, and then quantitative research would have research objectives. But what you find is many places have kind of got themselves embroiled in all these and confused which one is which, to a point where you will find that when you complete your proposal, people write both objectives and questions. And that is to do with the fact that it's really kind of satisfying the needs of who is asking rather than satisfying the expectations of pure research principles. So the answer is you can choose research questions only, but you may find that where you are working or where you are applying into asks for both. So they take away that right for you to choose what you want. Okay, so there is someone who is interested in doing a study that's been studied before. Look, you are a master student, so there is no requirement for you to do the study, a study that's never been done before. And remember, I said to you that research is about many conscientious decisions at different points of the journey. And one of the points of the journey is that one of the points of the journey is that you will you may all decide to study how X works, but one person will study it with 10 people, you will study with 4 people and questionnaires or whatever. So there are many points of differentiation that can occur between a problem being identified and the results of a study. So you can differentiate yourself from previous studies by looking at different methodologies, creating different objectives, and so forth. So you can do a study that someone else has done, as long as you can confirm that you're doing it will extend understanding of that topic in a meaningful way for people in your context, if your context was different from others. Is there a journal article or certain authors that talk about research paradigms? I think that reading list that I gave you covers that. There are people such as Creswell who are known for this, and I will type this. Creswell, or who, if you search, that should attend to it. There is a question about prescribed numbers of pages for master's research. That is impossible to answer, mainly because some of you will be doing a master's, but it will be a master's based on a dissertation of limited scope. Some might be a full master's. The best way to work with this is to find examples of master's dissertations that have been passed in your department that you are studying in, and get examples from that. That is your best bet to understand things. Sabelo Makubu, is it possible to do research on a business case that company was to implement? Look, the basic thing, Sabelo, is that to do research, you need to problematize your topic. So if you want to talk about, say, compensation for personal injuries, then you need to say, what is the problem that's happening? Is there inconsistent compensation protocols? Are there things that mean that some people are compensated and some are not in ways that don't make sense? And if you create that as a problem, then of course you can turn it into a research topic. But as you read up about your area, which is what you all ought to be doing, you will get to a sense where you have much more clarity about the nature of problems that your study area has spoken about. Is it possible for a problem to be localized given the dynamic of its geographic space? Yes, look, folks, the basic thing is there are some problems that have local expression. So you can have something that exists only in your locality, but is not played out in the same way, although you may find relatively similar phenomena elsewhere. So someone will say, look, in my area where I live, we treat people in this particular way and it's challenging. There are no other countries that appear to do this, but there are some inferential examples of similar types of things going on elsewhere. So in theory, if a place is on this earth, there will be a comparative elsewhere. It might not be direct, but it will be comparative. Good evening, Prof. For a mini dissertation, how many questions on objectives can we include? I think I did answer that. Folks, giving numbers is not a good thing because it limits people's ability, but I can give you an indication that with mini dissertations, usually it's 2 to 3 objectives. But, and of course, if there's 2 to 3 objectives, then it means there's 2 to 3 questions. But this is just a ballpark figure. You check with your department because people will vary things. All right. There's someone who's, Bani is asking about researching an abstract concept. Look, I spoke to you about giving dimensionality to your problem. So if you have a problem and it seems abstract, but you can show that it appears in the 3 different dimensions: statistical significance, topicality, and it is indeed relating to a problem that requires fixing, then it is worth looking at. But if there are multiple dimensions and you're looking at 3 abstract concepts, one has to ask myself, why am I doing 3 things and not 1? And that then becomes the issue about being clear about the aim, whether the aim of what you're looking at is singular, or have you now got 3 aims? And if you have 3 aims, you know that your study should have 1. I've been asked to check whether number of objectives is equal to research questions. Broadly speaking, they are. The only difference is sometimes the objectives have 1 more objective than the questions. And the last objective is when people promise to create something, that their last objective will be to develop a framework. You do not need to have a question that says, what is the framework? So you will find that some studies have 5 objectives, 4 research questions for doctoral studies. But master's level, the questions and the objectives are about the same number. Thanks for the informative session. Since research is logical nature, is it wrong to start by brainstorming some research questions for your focus? Look, you cannot, to brainstorm things, you need to have had a fairly good idea of things that are going wrong. And the layering of how things are going wrong is you have anecdotal observations, you go and read up on them. And by the time you sort of start to brainstorm, it is not blind brainstorming. You have a sense from the research what is missing. So you don't really brainstorm in the traditional way. Can a phenomena be limited to a particular area, or a phenomenon always universal? I'm not sure that I've understood this question, but phenomena are multi. They can belong to one space. They can be multi-dimensional. They have to speak to one problem, though. So you can have a problem that has 10 different discipline arms to it, but if you end up having 10 problems that you're looking at, then you've extended yourself beyond what academic research is. One question, one aim, one purpose. What is the problem between a phenomenon and a problem? A phenomenon is a statement that relates to an issue or understanding. A problem is more to do with and as something that is challenging and somehow causes challenges to the normal running of life. But a phenomenon can be neutral. A phenomenon can be a problem, or it can just be an issue. So that's the difference. Since a conceptual framework is developed before conducting the study, do I modify it when I start discovering new things during interviews? That question doesn't belong to this session, but the answer is that you don't. A conceptual framework is a framework, is you saying this is what you expect to have to look at, but when you understand new things, at the end you will say, look, my conceptual framework was this, and I found new things, and you will propose a new revised framework. Same question about objectives for master's degrees. I said 3 to 5, but once again, this is indicative, not final. Are you going to shed light on how we can go about citing very recent literature? That is not, there's something that's asking me about literature review, and folks who, right now the issues about topic and focusing of the topic and so forth. I will speak about the literature review in sessions to come, and that question about how do you cite recent literature is a very complicated one. But I will try, please retain that question. I will deal with it when I present tomorrow, so that we know we get things attended to. And I'm getting some good comments about the sessions. And then how can you structure a hypothesis? Okay, so folks, the dealing with hypothesis and things of that nature is a focus for tomorrow's session. Then there's someone who says it's always important to have a theoretical framework to underpin your research. I think when I said the definition of research is that it's systematic, a theoretical framework is one of those systems. So if you don't have a theoretical framework, then you are absent of a system for understanding your topic, and in that respect, it's not research. Then what is the difference between a study focus area and a work title? I think a focus area is the general area you're interested in, and a working title is the name that you will give to that area just for the purposes of your study. Is it possible to change your case amid a research proposal due to accessibility challenges? Look, folks, when you do research and you do a proposal, by the time you write the proposal, everything you promise to do should be something that you've already confirmed can be done. So if you are discovering as you're writing a proposal that you can't access populations, then you better change. Of course, one would have hoped to have changed. How long does it take to get feedback from a vetting committee? Look, we represent the central college that deals with these things for people. We're not specific in control of what different colleges do at different times. So I can't say categorically what each college will do or each department will do, but the policy talks about reasonable time. And yes, and that is what gets attended to. So it depends on the space you're in, but the person who can advise you is your allocated supervisor or the master's and doctoral person who does this. Then one more question. Oh, wait a minute. Folks, I must remind you, I think I've mentioned that we have a session tomorrow. It's actually not tomorrow, it's on Thursday evening. But to me, all the days end up coming, seeming to be one. So the follow-on session is on the 13th, which is Thursday. Is it advisable to choose a topic relating to the implication of laws in your country? I am from Namibia. Look, once again, the basic issue, and question is from Sarita. The basic issue is, can you problematize your focus? Is there a problem that has arisen from the thing you want to study? And can you present your interest in that as a research, as a question? And once you can, then the rest is possible. How can you set objectives to cover all the taxonomies when you're restricted to stating, say, 4 objectives? I gave all the different levels of the taxonomy to show how you logically work through objectives. But if you have 3 objectives, you might have 1 objective that's in the remembering domain, 1 that's in the evaluating domain, and so forth. And remember, the lower your level of study is, the lower the outcome level of objective we're interested in. So if you're doing a mini dissertation, by definition, the mini dissertation has no creation as an expected outcome. It also has minimal synthesis and so forth. So you have the choice and ability to choose fewer things. And remember, the numbers I gave you are not fixed, eh? It's just a guide. Is it a must to have research questions when you have objectives? I think I answered that question. I said it isn't, but each place that you write proposals for will have a pre-existing form. And if that form has a section that says questions and it says objectives, then you follow the law of the land. There's a question about, is it possible to upload our proposals for you to check them as you did last year? Folks, we have this service. We've created it to not begin. It does not begin this early in the program. It will be something that we set up a little bit later in the season, and once we have it, we will announce it with you. But I think you should give it a good month and a half or 2 before we feel competent to be able to take the volume of work. We're having to recontract some of the facilitators and so forth, and that's basically what it is. But the intention of the program is to be able to do that. And then there's a time frame for ethical applications. Folks, we've centralized things at UNISA. The idea is that we're talking about under 6 weeks, but I can't commit categorically because different departments will describe different pressures. They might have all students submit their things at the same time and so forth. And if you submit at an unpopular time, you find that you get reviewed much quicker. But if you submit at times when many other students submit, you will be stuck. Yeah. So, right. There's something that's asking, someone who's asking, and I'll treat this as the last question, differentiating between a mini dissertation and a full dissertation. So basically, this relates to master's work. Eh? At master's level, there are 2 types of research master's programs that people do. There's more than 2, but there's 2 that relate to this. Some people will do a master's where you have taught modules, so you might have a module on other things, 4 or 5 other modules on other things, and one thing will be one module that says this is a research module. When it's created like that, that research module is short, it's limited, and they call the product of that a mini dissertation or a dissertation of limited scope. What that means is you're allowed to make it a smaller study, you can have fewer objectives, you can write it shorter, and so forth. But if you do a full dissertation, the expectation is that you have gone on a master's course that is entirely research-based. So from day 1, you never meet a teacher, you just submit your proposal and you proceed, you submit, and that would be what attracts them, a full dissertation or a full master's dissertation. So by definition, that full master's dissertation will have more objectives, will be longer, more comprehensive, different numbers of chapters and so forth. But I will speak to these differences and all these finer detailed things when we get to the 13th on Thursday. Then there's a very last question now. Would you propose that people proceed from their masters with a doctoral study? Personally, I find that if it's done and it's not done very well, you take a master's study and you use it for a doctorate and you don't use it well, you don't do the right things to improve the topic, it can be disastrous. And about 80% of the times it generally is disastrous. But there are people who have understood that for a start, if it's a topic where you want to extend the understanding by developing new objectives in relation to the question, then you're starting on the right path, but you really have to understand what you're doing. So if I were to say blanketly, I think it's a dangerous idea, but if done well, it can happen. So I hope that offers guidance. Right, folks, I think it's 7:45 now. We've done an exceptional job with this. I thank you very much for your attention, and I hope we meet again on Thursday. You will be happy or discomforted by the idea that many of the first sessions that you do will be facilitated by me, because we are working on contracts for finalizing other facilitators. And while we do that, the old man in the house will be the one who's on cue. Okay, thank you very much. I'll see you on Thursday at 6 p.m. Take care.